so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe when Lena gets back, she can forward to everyone. And it will be, it's in its entirety, it will be in the formal written of the minutes.
Or maybe the interim clerk can prepare it for us.
Okay, sure. Lena will be back on Monday, most likely.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Moving on to 5A. 5A is a public hearing, FY '24 budget amendment public hearing, and ARPA budget amendment number 4. I declare the public hearing open. Is there a presentation?
All right, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the governing body. Before I turn it back over to you to conduct the public hearing, staff just wanted to provide sort of a high-level recap of the budget amendment presentation last week. And for the folks that are watching at home, this is a very high-level recap. If you would like more details, the actual presentation is uploaded to the city website last week, as well as this week. As briefed last week, for the fiscal year 23 closeout, the general fund has a $6 million surplus. On the revenue side, we had $63.5 million, $6 million of which is ARPA. Really, the drivers include the real estate tax collection rate, as well as CSA reimbursement and interest earned in the cash accounts. On the expenditure side, we're looking at $57.5 million. Again, 6 of those is ARPA, and mainly it's just departments staying on the budget, as well as capital underspending. For the enterprise fund, we had surplus in 2 of the funds, primarily due to capital budget underspending. And then for the solid waste fund, we did have a minor deficit. However, it was not as bad as we thought it was going to be. So a net impact of a net positive impact of $175K of unused fund balance. For the fiscal year 24A1, staff is asking an increase of $6.9 million. That includes a double counting of $2.6 million for capital. So really, the actual $4.3 million is the actual increase. As you can see there on the revenue side, increased state funding, interest, and carryover. And then on the expenditure side, staff support, really seeing a big increase in CSA, and as well as the ARPA capital carryover. And then the table there just sort of breaks down what that $4.3 million consists of between the general fund, the fund balance, and the ARPA. And the items in red essentially just shows a balanced budget between revenue and expenditure. And then one last note on that, in the general fund on the expenditure side, the $2.2 million does include those items that are discretionary, that are highlighted in yellow during the previous presentation, and that was a total of roughly $546,000. For enterprise fund, for water sewer, about $2 million increase. However, the bulk of that, 75% of that is carryover. We did have $500,000 increase, and that was primarily due to UOSA and water purchase increase. And then stormwater fund, all carryover and very marginal cost increase in solid waste fund. For ARPA, for the table on the bottom that shows the revenue for ARPA, obviously interest to date, as well as projected interest. We're in a high interest rate environment, so we're hoping that we'll get that, but you never know what's going to happen in the next couple of years. But the total projected revenue is about 22.6 to include the interest. As of fiscal year 23, we spent about $8 million for fiscal year 24. We're budgeted to spend 1.8 for general fund, and that's primarily for eligible staff salaries and allowable ARPA stipends. And then on the CIP side, roughly $5 million, and you can see the breakdown there by departments. Of note, that includes $2.1 million that we shifted from ARPA premium pay to cover city CIP, so that we can use that money to continue the premium pay. For the carryovers, the city budget, or the amendment, had about $6.6 million in total carryovers. of which the breakdown by funds are, 1.7 for general fund, transportation about 3.9, and ARPA itself is 1.1. And then finally, for discretionary spending, I won't go into all these in detail, but I kind of arranged them by cost amount, and then staff comment for each of the item. I will say that, obviously the city manager recommends approving all of these. However, it's your prerogative to, to kind of approve each of them as you wish. So, with that being said, I have Tony, Josh, as well as Sarah as well. If you have any questions, but I'll return back to you to do the public hearing.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from the governing body? And let's start with Councilmember Hampton, who's home. We don't want to forget that you're there. Do you have any questions or comments?
Well, first of all, thank you for letting me go first. I guess my first comment really has to do with the bonuses for employees. I don't mind giving bonuses for employees, but I really prefer that the bonuses be directed at the full-time individuals. If we are going to give it to part-time individuals, I do believe that they should be here more than a year. I think the part-time bonuses should be based on length of stay here. So I think anybody that's been here 3 or more years probably should get a bonus if we are going to do part-time. I know it's small potatoes, but I'm really not in favor of the almost $2K for the Independence Day fireworks, given what we are probably going to encounter here in the coming year. If everybody's been reading the papers, we know that the budget's going to get tighter out of Richmond. And for me, I know, like I said, it's small potatoes, but that is not a necessity. That is a nice to have. And our budgets are pretty much the equivalent of running a small company or a small nonprofit. And I'm really moving towards the mindset of not nice to have, but what we really need. So I'm really not in favor of the 1.7K for the fireworks. I have no problems with the contracting support, because we do to augment the staff and get us in a good position. And the good thing about contractor support is that at a point where we feel that we're at a good spot, we can make a decision there to continue or not. The building inspector for rental enforcement, we're going to need that, so I have no issue there. So to recap, not in favor of the 1.7 for the fireworks. Am in favor of the bonuses, but if we are going to go to give part-time, then they should be here for 3 years or more. So that's all that I have to say regarding the budget, the amended budget.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Hampton. Any comments or questions from others on the governing body? Okay. I'm very supportive of the suggestions that are here on the discretionary spending. I am in support of employee bonuses because I think we lose a lot when we don't appreciate our employees, and they are called to do a lot with very little, and they have done so for quite some time. They work very hard, full-time, part-time. They're always working hard. And I'm also especially supportive of the code, the zoning and building inspector and zoning enforcement officer. I think that's an extremely important hire. So, but basically, I'm supportive of all the items here. So, any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Moving on to public comment. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment on the public hearing?
Mayor,
Seeing no one, do we have a motion to close? Yes.
Mayor, if I just add one comment on the bonus. So we have a pretty high threshold for part-time staff, to Councilmember Hampton's point. And the majority of our part-time staff are permanent part-time staff, and they've been here for more than 3 years. But we'll take that into consideration.
Okay.
what into
Do
consideration?
we have a motion to close?
Wait.
Oh,
He said he's gonna take that into consideration.
can you put your mic down?
You're gonna take what into consideration?
So are you all not in favor? Okay, but,
No one said anything other than one person.
okay, gotcha.
If I can interject, we did base the part-time staff on people, most of the part-time staff that are eligible for the bonuses with Parks and Rec are ones that have been with Parks and Rec for 3 years or more, and they work at least 29 hours per week.
How many staff members is that? Just an estimate. I'm supportive, I'm just generally just for,
Jay, I think he had maybe 15.
okay.
And then we have a few other permanent part-time staff in the city.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is Councilmember Hampton again. I think, if I remember correctly, last week when the presentation was given, it was stated that the part-time bonus would be given to people that have been here at least 1 year. And that's why I made the recommendation that the part-time bonus be for folks that have been here 3 years or more. Now, if I misunderstood what was said last week, please let me know.
No, you're correct. That was the criteria briefed last week.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's my recollection also. I think more than 1 year is fair. 1 year or more is fair.
If I could just make a statement, I think what was reported last week was for the bonuses, we were going to give them to staff who had been with the city at the end of the fiscal year. So they would have had to have been with the city in FY23 to be eligible for the bonus.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 6A, which is proclamation thanking volunteers and sponsors of this year's turkey giveaway. And before I read the proclamation, let me read off the names of the folks that we are recognizing this evening. And we thank you all very much. The donors and volunteers are La Finca, Guapos, Social Soiree, Councilmember Daryl Moore, Councilmember Yessi Amaya, David Wilmore, Jaden Perez, Vivian Perez, Charlie Amaya, Melanie Duran, Jezebel Amaya, Migueli Vasquez, Jesus Amaya, and various city staff, residents that assisted or donated. And the proclamation reads, whereas the governing body of the City of Manassas Park are extremely grateful for the great service provided to our community by all of our donors and volunteers, and whereas the governing body desires to recognize outstanding performance of our donors and volunteers as they accomplished collecting, sorting, and distributing non-perishables and turkeys to provide to the residents of our community. And whereas the donors and volunteers demonstrate the true definition of kindness through providing time and goods and willingness to be there for all of our residents. And whereas the donors and volunteers' humble, caring, hardworking, and can-do attitude should be recognized and celebrated. Now therefore, I, Jeanette Rischel, Mayor of the City of Manassas Park, Virginia, and on behalf of the Manassas Park governing body, hereby proclaim and recognize the volunteers and sponsors of this year's turkey giveaway in Manassas Park and thank them for their generous contributions to the community.
Moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you very much. Councilmember Amaya and Councilmember Moore have the certificates that they will be getting to the recipients.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to Sarah for your help and the city staff and the community and Manassas, the Parks and Rec staff as well. And thank you, Mr. Moore, for your donation. And I just wanted to say that it's something that we've done now for 3 years. And we're hoping that the citizens, residents of Manassas Park know that this is available for the next year. So please sign up. It's always on the website, and we're trying to push it out more because we're willing to help out 150 families every year. Sometimes we don't get that many, but we're always striving to help more if we can every year. So thank you so much, and I will forward the certificates to the appropriate people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to say something?
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Other than
Councilmember
thank
Moore?
you to the community. It was a wonderful effort, and thank Councilmember Maya for her leadership. Thank you.
Okay, super. Okay, moving on to information, we have the FY final audit presentation this evening. Robinson Farmer and Cox Associate. My understanding is we have Mr. Mike Moran with us. Welcome, Mr. Moran.
Thank you. Just the mouse. All right. Good evening, Council. Thank you for having me here tonight to present the annual comprehensive financial report for the year ended June 30th, 2023. Can't believe another year has gone by already. I feel like I was just here already. My name is Mike Moran, and I'm a director at RFC. For tonight's presentation, I'm going to go over the engagement summary, the audit results, the two other communication items that go along with the audit report itself, and a few financial highlights, including some items showing the fund balance, revenue, and expenditure information. You engaged us to perform a financial statement audit and compliance report for the year ended June 30th, 2023. This audit was subject to the auditing standards generally accepted in the U.S., the specifications of audits of county, cities, and towns issued by the APA, and the standards for financial audits contain the government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General. And lastly, the provisions of uniform guidance, so your single audit. The main byproduct of the audit itself is the annual comprehensive report. It's about 200-300 pages now. It continues to grow every year. But within that report, there are 3 auditor type reports. And what makes them stand out is you'll see our header on the top. The first one is our independent auditors report. This is up at the front. This is our report on the numbers. So I'm happy to let you know for the year ended June 30th, 2023, we had an unmodified opinion, which is a good, clean opinion, and that's exactly what you're looking for. The second auditor type report is our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. If we come across any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in compliance or internal controls, we'll have a finding in the report itself. I'm happy to let you know for the year ended June 30th, 2023, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So once again, that's good, clean, what you're looking for. The third auditor type report has to do with the single audit. So anytime a governmental entity or nonprofit expends over $750,000 in federal expenditures, you're subject to a single audit. So obviously Manassas Park spent over that. I think it's probably been years since you haven't done that. So once it triggers a single audit, we test major programs based on different thresholds and criteria. And I'm happy to let you know for this year, our report on compliance for each major program that we tested and the internal control over compliance. We did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So once again, that's exactly what you're looking for. Along with the report itself, there are 2 separate communication items. The first is our letter to the board. It's our governance letter. Within this letter, we would say if we had any disagreements with management, any uncorrected or uncorrected misstatements, if we had to consult other CPAs, important items that we want to directly communicate to you. This year, the letter is very standard. The only thing in there that changed a little bit is the new implementation of GASB 96, and this is on the subscription-based IT assets. So that was implemented for the year ended June 30th, 2023, and it's similar to last year where GASB 87 was implemented for leases. Oops. And the second item that also goes along with the report itself is any management comments and recommendations we have. And these are very minor items that don't rise to a level of material weakness or significant deficiency. Moving on to the financial highlights. On a full accrual basis, on your statement of net position for your governmental activities, the net position at year end was approximately $34.1 million. And you can find that at the bottom of Exhibit 1, which is an increase from last year of about $16.9 million, so close to $17 million increase in net position on a full accrual basis. And when I mean full accrual basis, I'm talking about the capital assets are included on here, any long-term liabilities, your pension, OPEB items, your leases, so anything that's long-term. And the net position for your business type activities, so this would include your water and sewer, your stormwater funds, your solid waste funds. The net position at year end was about 20.6 million, which was an increase of about 970,000 from the prior year. Continuing on to the fund basis, so this is on a modified accrual basis. So this will be your governmental funds without capital assets or your long-term liabilities or your pension or OPEB items included. The total fund balance for governmental funds, so we're talking about your general fund, your capital projects, your debt service, your proffer, your non-major ones. The fund balance at year end was approximately 28.5 million, which was an increase from last year of about 4.7 million. Of this 28.5 million in governmental fund balance, about 19.2 million is unassigned fund balance. So that's fund balance that is not committed or restricted. And lastly, I just kind of want to point out Exhibit 11 for you. So when you get a chance to really go back and dig into the report, on Exhibit 11, you'll find your budgetary comparison schedule. So here, when you're looking at it, you'll see your original budget, your final budget, and your actual, and you can tell the results for the year for the general fund on that Exhibit 11. Just to kind of further illustrate the financial results for the year ended June 30th, 2023, this slide right here is your general fund balance from 2019 to 2023. So you can see starting on the left-hand side of the graph, working your way to the right, you can see the steady increase in unassigned fund balance. And I mentioned earlier, if you look over in that column under 2023, you'll see that 19.2 million of unassigned fund balance of the total 19.5 million. The next slide is your governmental fund revenues. As you can see at the top, the main governmental fund revenue is your property taxes, so that's your personal property, your real estate, and then below that you'll see your intergovernmental revenue, so that's your state and federal, for example, your ARPA revenue. And then below that you'll see your other local taxes, so your meals tax, your business licenses, any of those that are not under the property taxes. Just continuing on the governmental fund revenues, just another breakdown here to kind of illustrate the results for FY23. You can see your property taxes there in yellow, made up about 59% of the total governmental fund revenues. And right behind that was the intergovernmental with 22.3, and the other local taxes about 10.5% of that total 64 million. For your governmental fund expenditures, this is from 2019 to 2023. The first thing you'll notice right off the bat is that spike last year, and that's for the City Hall expenditures. So you had a majority of the expenditures in 2022. There's still more in 2023, and I'm assuming and expecting there'll still be some more in 2024 as well. But that's the big jump you see right there in 2022. This slide right here of that 67 million of governmental fund expenditures, it kind of illustrates what the various functions, their proportionate share of those expenditures are. So you can see on here, the biggest share of the governmental fund expenditures, which education with 20.2, followed by public safety and general government. That's all I have for you tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Amaya? Comments or questions?
No questions.
Councilmember Javed?
Yes. Hey, thank you. Good evening. Just remind me, when you mention unassigned, what does that mean, unassigned funds?
So I can go back up to that slide for you. So that's fund balance that hasn't been restricted or non-spendable. So it has nothing in use. It's not been allocated.
And then which slide shows the true net position?
Whoops. So your net position for government activities was about 34 million, and for the business type activities, about 20.6.
So it doesn't say increase or decrease from last year?
Yep. So for your governmental activities, so like your general fund, your capital projects, your debt service, all on the full accrual basis, that increase was about 17 million from last year.
Okay.
And then right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but right below that, you could see on the slide for the business type activities, the increase was about 968,000.
And then is the ARPA still being allocated separately, or is it just, because I remember last year or 2 years when we got the ARPA funds, I think, I believe you guys were saying that you were gonna audit it separate and not include it in the governmental funds.
No, it's included in there.
Okay.
So yeah, so for whatever was been allocated to those ARPA, whatever expenditures are allocated to those ARPA funds, that's what fund we recognized it in.
Okay.
Yeah, it was another major program this year as well for our single audit.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
That's it? No follow-up?
All
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Moore?
No, thank you.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Councilmember Hampton, do you have any comments or questions?
No, it seemed pretty straightforward. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
We will send an email to city manager and he can interact with you. Thank you very
Perfect.
much. It's a
Yep.
great presentation.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval and adoption of an ordinance to provide an extension of the due date for real estate taxes to January 10th, 2024 as presented, and approval of appointments to the boards and committees of COG consisting of COG Board of Directors, Councilmember Moore, Transportation Planning Board, Mayor Rischel, Air Quality Committee, Councilmember Javed, Human Services Policy Committee, Councilmember Amaya, Climate, Energy, and Environment Policy Committee, Vice Mayor Mensing, Chesapeake Bay and Water Resources Policy Committee, Councilmember Hampton, Food and Agriculture Regional Member Policy Committee, Councilmember Amaya, and approval by the governing body of the appointment of Ms. Toni Jenkins to serve as the interim city clerk for the duration of Ms. Lane O'Connor's absence until the incumbent returns to duty. Do we have a motion?
Before we vote, what did you have me down for?
I'm sorry, what?
I said, what did you have me down for? I don't think I'm on that committee.
Region forward.
Let's see,
I think he's region forward.
air quality,
Okay, I thought you said human services. That's
No,
fine.
that's me.
what?
That's me.
No, you sent me air quality.
Yeah, you're correct.
That's what your
I
email
misheard
said.
it, yeah.
Okay. Are we okay with
Yep,
this?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Do we have a motion to move?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to old business. 10A is short-term rental zoning ordinance text amendment. Okay. Do we have a brief presentation or?
There are no presentation. I think Dean was gonna remind you all of a couple of notes. Dean, are you on?
Yeah, hi. Yes, I am. I just wanted to remind you that this is not the same as the rental inspection district that we'll be bringing before you later in the next, probably in January. Some of the short-term rentals would get captured there, but again, only if the owner submitted or let us know that they were renting it out. So that's not a way to catch anyone who's not complying with the law. So they're just different. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Okay, thank you, Dean. I have a question or a comment for Councilmember Javed. You mentioned several meetings ago that you were personally engaged in rental activity. So if you intend to make use of this short-term rental initiative, then are you considering abstaining from the vote on this item?
I don't see a reason why I need to abstain.
Uh,
I don't have any business here or financial interest. With any of
Well,
the
if you were to make use of if you voted yes and then you decided to make use of the short-term rental,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still don't
Okay.
understand what, yeah.
Okay, no, it was just a question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question, a very good question, because I may want to, if we just vote on this tonight, put my house up as a short-term rental. So I would love Dean to opine. It's not currently a short-term rental. I don't currently have Airbnb at my house. But if this were to pass, I could vote for it and still offer my house up as a short-term rental. Is that not correct?
Yes, that is. So the conflict of interest would come into play if you had an active illegal short-term rental and you were trying to get some sort of benefit from that. But speculative benefits are not something we need to worry about. Any one of you could conceivably decide to do this, so as could anyone in the city. So just because you might possibly benefit from it doesn't mean you have to recuse yourself.
Okay, thank you, Dean.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any comments? No? Okay, I just wanted to say that these short-term rentals essentially function as hotels. And a hotel is a commercial business, and this would essentially be bringing commercial business into a residential neighborhood. When you rent a hotel room, it's my understanding that a background check is of course not run on you, whereas a long-term rental does run a background check. I believe it would be a mistake for the city to sanction this type of transient activity in our neighborhoods. So I cannot support this. Councilmember Hampton, do you have any comments or questions?
I actually have a question. If we do not pass this and we leave the ordinance as is, and as well as approve the inspectors, how would we go about addressing those existing short-term rentals in our city?
So the two inspectors that you're proposing to fund with the mid-year budget amendment, they would have to take time to review Craig's list, the Verbo, Airbnb, to see if there were anyone doing this. So they would have to take the same time to determine if there was any illegal short-term rentals as they would to determine if a legal short-term rental, if you were to approve it, had registered with the city. So regardless, I see them having a portion of their day going through to determine whether or not we have short-term rentals.
Okay. And do we know if we have to inform the more formal short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, and the other for-profit companies of our, or I guess we'd probably re-inform them of our ordinance that we're, whatever the decision is. So like,
Yes.
we keep it, okay.
Yes, you would definitely want to let them know. And we'd also want to try to get the word out some other way too. I'm not sure what an effective way would be, but we do obviously have this activity in the city, so we need to get the word out that it's not allowed.
Okay. Those were my questions. Thank you.
Okay. And
Can I say, Ms. Mayor, I agree with what you stated. I believe it being transient and the impact on property value for homeowners is just something that would impact just the value of the property. And I don't know if everybody knows this, about 21% of homes, you may know this, are being bought by corporations and single-family communities. And this would allow an openness for corporations to come in and buy up in many places and do short-term rentals, and it's transient, and I just don't believe it's a benefit for the community. So I do not support this. Thank you.
do you have any comments, Councilmember? Any other follow-up comments over here? Okay.
I'll just say shortly, I've said this numerous times, but I don't support it either, and it's mostly because of the safety factor. We don't know who's coming into
Yeah.
the house next door.
Yeah, and because of the lack of the background check, I mean, actually, there could be pedophiles moving in for 3-4 days, scoping out the neighborhood. We have no idea what would be going on. That's a real concern, I think. Okay, if there's,
I guess I got a comment.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, you guys are not agreeing to the Airbnb and the Verbo, or just the short term?
The short-term rental.
outside of Airbnb?
Both.
No,
So both?
all of it.
So no homeowner can rent out their property? You're saying?
Short-term.
Short-term,
Short-term.
Short term.
or less than 30 days, right? I mean, I don't know, Dean, you might be able to help. Can we restrict homeowners from restricting their use of private property?
You can because of the nature of it. So it's the use that we're restricting. So you can rent out a house for, a year, 2 years, 6 months. That we cannot restrict that. But because these short-term rentals, as the mayor pointed out, make this essentially a hotel-like environment, and it's something that impacts the residential nature of the community, we can restrict that because it's a use that's being restricted. It's not permitted in the residential districts.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up?
And then the short-term definition is 30 days, right? Less than 30 days?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Councilmember Hampton, do you have any follow-up or further comments?
Other than other jurisdictions in the Commonwealth have, actually many of the jurisdictions have been faced with the same predicament. And I know some jurisdictions have said no, other jurisdictions have put strict parameters in place. But it's something that has to be dealt with. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and vote on this. Are we on camera? Because it's going to be very difficult to do the minutes. I have a feeling it's going to be a close vote. So why don't we?
We're broadcasting.
Broadcast, okay, super. Okay, staff recommendation is that the governing body approves zoning ordinance text amendment ZOTA number 23-05 by ordinance as presented. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, Councilmember Javed's hand is up. Councilmember Hampton, is your hand up? I can't see.
No, my hand is not up.
Okay. Okay, all those opposed to this, please raise your hand. Councilmember Hampton, what is your vote?
My vote is no to the ordinance as presented.
Okay, thank you. Are there any abstentions? Okay. Yes, Councilmember Moore is abstaining for the record. Okay, thank you, everyone. The motion fails. Thank you. Moving on to 10B, this is the short-term rental registry. Dean, do you have anything that you would like to say about this?
I prepared this ordinance as at the request of the Commissioner of the Revenue, and it's the Commissioner of Revenue's Association that was behind the legislation at the state level. It's just a registry so they can tax these short-term rentals. Now, we have actually gotten people that have come in and paid the tax, even though they're not supposed to have the short-term rentals. This registry, had you approved the previous ordinance, would have been helpful from the tax side of it, whereas the previous one was for the zoning side of it. So there's really not much use for this ordinance at this point, since, you could keep it, you could approve it if you want, but there really is, since you're not allowing short-term rentals in residential districts, I don't see very likely that we're going to have short-term rentals in any other kind of district.
Yeah, no use for it. Thank you, Dean. Thank you. Any comments on this?
Yeah, I got a question.
Go ahead.
So, with this, I guess, not passing, basically, how are we gonna enforce, short-term rentals then?
Well, I think they're going to start by looking at all the social media. They're going to start by looking at Airbnb sites, Verbo sites.
And then what, knock on the door and see if they're a guest?
Yeah.
Well, I would leave that leave that answer to the professionals. I don't know, How would that work, Nikki? If you could give us a rundown. Thank you.
Well, essentially, I mean, we would once we investigated the short-term rental Airbnb sites, that's enough proof based on all the photos, because we've looked at them and they actually kind of show the front door and the address. So we could, it would be a zoning violation, and we would, based on the evidence on the site, we would say that they're in violation, and then they would have to come into compliance. So what their remedy should be to remove their home and advertisement from the site, and therefore we would assume that they are no longer renting, but we would have to monitor it. And it's a zoning violation, so they have 30 days to remedy it or appeal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would essentially send them an NOV and just monitor it.
No, that's great, but there's some short-term rentals that are not on that listing, Airbnb or Vrbo, right? There's Craigslist, there's Facebook, there's word of mouth.
Well, that's
there's
you are
relocation.
right. Given if
can't-
we're having an increase in staff, we can, but you're right, we wouldn't be able to cover all of the
Right.
places where this occurs.
So that's why I'm a little confused. We know we have a problem right now. We have an issue right now with these short-term rentals. So without regulation, we're just saying, okay, go do the same thing, right? I mean, we didn't pass the ordinance, but that ordinance was actually regulating short-term rentals, which I would think that would curb some of your issues that you guys are seeing with the community. But now we're gonna keep it with the status quo with no regulation. I just don't understand the logic in that.
Well, the regulation is that they cannot do it,
Right, they can't do it right now. It's in.
but we're hiring staff. We're hiring more staff for enforcement purposes.
So do you think because someone would register, they would still follow the law all the time
Register with short-term.
with the short-term registry?
Yeah, at least we could monitor it once it's registered with
I
the
mean,
city.
if I were to rent out my basement
Right,
to someone, why would I go ahead and register? What's the point of registering?
to the city?
Yeah, if I'm not following that law, why would I follow this law?
Right.
I mean, you're still gonna have
Can't
the same
speak for
thing.
everybody else.
You're still gonna have the same thing on both sides.
Right. I mean, people are doing it right now, too.
I agree. They'll do it with the registry too.
With the registry or without it.
So we'll be in the same boat, so you're stating.
And we also work on a complaint basis as well, so
Yeah.
if neighbors see activity that they believe is showing a short-term rental, then we would investigate that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would caution that too, because I mean, they might not know if they're visiting guests or
Well-
family members staying there temporarily, a college kid coming back for summer. I mean, 30 days, someone could stay in my basement for a week, could be a family member.
Well, right, it
Right.
certainly would have to be for payment, and, we would have to investigate whether or not it is payment. We may monitor, we may just do a courtesy visit and just ask them. We do that a lot. We go to the property owner, knock on the door and say, we've had complaints. Are you doing this type of, work or activity here? And so, we do it that way. But you're right. I mean, it would be difficult to prove, and really the easiest way to do that is the advertisements on the websites.
Nothing is gonna be easy, Councilmember Javed. Everything that we do is a little bit difficult, but that doesn't take away our responsibility to try. And I think we really need the enforcement staff hired. We need to have them hit the ground running. Because right now, for all we know, it really could be out of control. And we have to get control of this. It's not gonna get any better. In fact, it's going to get worse if we don't do something.
No, I understand. Yeah. I'm just worried about community members harassing other community members. So we just gotta find a way to
Right.
regulate it professionally and
Yeah.
equally.
Okay. Any other comments from folks? Comments? Yeah? Any
This
other?
is, sorry, this is
Yes.
Councilmember Hampton. Quick question. We know that these houses exist. Is there anything adverse with going ahead and passing the zoning ordinance text that came from the Commissioner of Revenue so that we can go and make a list based off of the websites? And then that office can go and request taxes, the taxes that are due from running the property?
That's a Dean question.
That's
Unfortunately, I
a-
can't answer
yeah.
that.
Dean?
Right.
I can just say that the registry was designed to, for tax purposes. But comments have been made in the past that, these people, they have illegal businesses, but they're paying taxes. Why aren't we then turning around and fining them for having an illegal business? I suspect not a lot of them are going to want to register if they know that this is something that we're not allowing. So I'm not really sure what benefit it would have. Like I said, we currently have a couple that are paying their taxes anyway, even without the registry. And I suspect that the number is not going to go up a whole lot just because we have a registry ordinance. That being said, I mean, it's conceivable, I guess, we could have a Airbnb or some other type of short-term rental out there that's not in a residential district. I'd have to look at the zoning ordinance to see where that might happen. Certainly, we allow for bed and breakfasts establishments in some districts of the city. So, I guess they are allowed. It just wouldn't be your own home that you would be using.
Okay.
So I guess I didn't really answer the question, but the answer is I don't really see the benefit of the registry if they're not permitted in the city.
Okay. Just wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Based on Councilmember Hampton's question, would we then refund the taxes that we've collected from the people you said have paid taxes already?
No, they still owe the taxes. So we have a transient occupancy tax. The registry was just it doesn't change that at all. The registry just required them to register with the Commissioner of the Revenue so that she would know that she had to charge them TOT, or she would be expecting remittance of TOT. So we don't have to return the money because they're still transients that have been in the city. Even though they aren't supposed to, they still did it. So they are properly paying the taxes.
So even though it's illegal for them to have that in their home in current law, we as a city could still collect their taxes on something that we've deemed illegal.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound a little counterintuitive, but
It sounds a little crazy.
they do have.
That's what it sounds.
It does sound. It does.
Yeah, I would move that we refund those people. I'm not sure if this is the place to do it, but anyone that's paid taxes to date, we should give them their money back.
Well,
On the profit tax?
and I think the point is that would lead directly to the enforcement aspect of this.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I agree.
Oh, yeah. Did you have a question?
Oh, no, just refunding what, their property tax? What do you-
No, their occupancy tax
Oh, occupancy.
that they've paid the city.
Okay. Well, if there's no other comments or questions, let me read the staff recommended motion that the governing body approve and adopt the ordinance to create a registry for short-term rental of property as presented, subject to final city attorney review. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Madam Mayor, before we vote on this, I think we should make a motion to table this. Dean has said that this idea doesn't make sense without the other one that we just didn't do.
Exactly.
So I'd rather make a motion to table item 11A.
Second.
10B?
It's been second.
Wait,
Or
10B.
I'm sorry, 10B, I have the wrong one here. 10B.
Second.
10B,
Okay,
to table.
okay.
It's been seconded.
Did we have a second?
That was
Yes,
me,
we did.
second.
Okay, okay.
Can
All
I
those-
ask a real quick question here, real quick? Table it until when?
Indefinite.
Indefinitely? Or
Indefinite.
okay, thank you.
What was the question?
How
When?
long, table until?
Until
And I said indefinite.
indefinitely,
Yep.
okay, okay.
And
Okay, all those in favor of Councilmember Moore's?
Keith has a question.
just want to provide some context on the transient occupancy tax. So far, we've collected about $3,300. It's not a very well enforced mechanism, so it's very difficult.
think the thing we need to focus on is enforcement,
Enforcement,
because we
yeah.
need to cut down or stop what's going on in the neighborhoods.
Totally agree.
Okay, Councilmember Moore, would you please state your,
Yeah, I move that we table item 10B, motion to table indefinitely.
okay,
Second.
and we have a second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. 11A is the vote on the FY24 budget amendment and ARPA budget amendment number 4. Public hearing having been held a bit earlier. Any final staff comments?
Just one additional comment. So I think based on a couple of items we found, we'll probably have to do at least one more amendment in the future to close out this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the governing body?
Yeah, I plan to support the motion that's before the item that's before us. I just think the 2,000 is worth it. I've seen the fireworks show. It is so much different when it's done electronically than manual. I think it's safer, and it's only 2,000. It's less than 2,000. We're talking about $1,700. So I'm asking my colleagues to support.
So I would like to propose or give an idea to the chamber here. We have extra money from the Latino Festival that was left over. So we could, if the state, if it's something that Councilmember Hampton thinks that it's gonna be an issue to support $2,000, I think we can take from that money and put it towards the 4th of July, if that's okay. If that's something you wanna do.
I don't think you would even have to do that,
Yeah.
Councilmember Amaya. I think it's not, as you say, it's not a great deal. It's not. And if we see that times are getting tough again, we're gonna have to start cutting anyway. We're gonna have to start trimming back on various items anyway. So I don't see the harm in spending the extra, what is it, $2,000? Yeah.
1,700.
1,700, yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
And this is Laura, this is Councilmember Hampton again. Just like I said earlier, I realize it's small potatoes, but to echo your point, Mayor, we do have to start, there might come a time where things might get a little bit tighter based on what I've been reading in the newspaper, what's coming out of Richmond, the fact that we know that ARPA funds are going to sunset here before long. We've also seen a decrease in some of the taxes from restaurants. Hopefully that's just a little blip, but I only said that so that we have that in the back of our mind as we move forward for the rest of this year and as we start to build the fiscal 25 budget. So at the moment, I don't have any issues with what's proposed, but that's why I said what I said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think if times do get tough, and I know I've seen some gloom and doom, I've seen both perspectives expressed. And if times do get tough, we'll be looking to trim. We'll be revisiting the budget. So, anyway, I support the amendment as is. Any other comments or, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question regarding the 131 for the building inspector, zoning enforcement, and the rental enforcement. So that money's gonna be split between all 3 departments? And if so, then how much is each, are we allocating towards that?
Yeah, so for that one, I can get back with you with the split, but it's just for the building inspector and zoning, so 2 folks, and for 6 months only. So the rest of the fiscal year. For the full year, it's gonna be double that.
So that's what I'm saying. So we're gonna hire all 3 of these positions this fiscal year?
It's 2 for that one, but yes.
2 positions? And then we already have the salary and everything in place?
Yes, it's budgeted for an amendment. And the reason why we're doing 2 for that, because they're inspecting for different things. zoning for permits-related issues and then building for the actual building safety issues.
So, okay, sorry, let me just get this straight. So building inspector is for, gonna help out with the rental enforcement as well?
I think if they find a violation, then they'll definitely check into it and then look at it from a building safety perspective.
Okay. Yeah, if you can just email the split. Oh, sorry.
So your building inspector is really a property maintenance inspector in this instance when you're dealing with already constructed homes. Their role would be to enforce the property maintenance code. But the property maintenance code and proper enforcement thereof requires a lot of building knowledge. Actually, when you take the property maintenance test, your property maintenance book is about 70 pages, and 90% of the questions come out of a 300-page blue book called the residential code. So the knowledge that a building inspector, property maintenance inspector brings to the situation, that's how we inspect rentals currently. If you're doing a long-term rental, our rental inspection program is conducted by a property maintenance inspector who goes in, inspects per the property maintenance code, looks for any issues, any violations of the maintenance code, and those have to be corrected before a certificate's issued. Same would exist with short-term rental enforcement, but in this case, if we're not going to enforce, if we're not gonna have an active allowable program, the property maintenance inspector will simply be when the zoning inspector gets into homes, sees it has been rented out, that perhaps this property's been reconstructed, remodeled to keep separate quarters. That's when the building inspector would have to step in, see what work was done without permit, what work is allowable, and help them through the process.
Okay. Yeah, because I wouldn't think they would be enforcing rental inspections with these building inspections.
No, that's a zoning issue. The actual act of running a rental is a zoning issue.
And we just passed enforcement for rental? Or we did not?
But we also have to remember the intent of this was to increase rental inspection enforcement in general. So we may not have short-term rentals, but we'll always have long-term rentals. And the city's been, I won't say overwhelmed, but the number of long-term rentals has drastically increased over the past half a decade. Housing prices are sky high. A lot of people can't afford to buy. A lot of people are renting. So this whole program, this rental inspection program, is not just an issue of short-term rentals. Right now, we have one building inspector who spends the entire day doing building inspections for new work permits. We have a zoning administrator or a zoning inspector who works part-time doing code enforcement, part-time working as a planner, and we have one full-time code enforcement inspector. We can't possibly be looking into newspapers, social media, finding long-term rentals, and proactively enforcing a long-term rental program with the staff we have. We're gonna need a property maintenance inspector, someone who's knowledgeable in buildings, and we're gonna need zoning enforcement. So that's why the positions were recommended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow-up?
Yeah, I would just like to see the split for the 131 for all these because there's zoning, there's vehicle, there's rental, and there's building inspector. So I'm trying to see how this is all being allocated to all four of those positions. And then the two positions where we are budgeted for this fiscal year, is that for the rental enforcement and the building inspector?
Yeah, so the 131 is for 2 personnel and 1 vehicle rental. And that's the vehicle rental that we're gonna get through the enterprise lease. It's gonna be a sedan.
Rental?
Yes, a rental vehicle for them to drive around and
and
force.
FTE
Yeah.
or something.
No, it's just 2 personnel, period, for that.
And can you tell me those 2 personnel are for which position?
The building inspector and the zoning enforcement officer.
Zoning enforcement. So not the rental enforcement?
No.
Okay. And then with the tabling of item 10B, we would not need any rental enforcement if we table this.
I think you're looking at this to catch up, correct? This is what you need to operate your department to catch up as well, correct?
Right.
Need what?
I think this is the recommendation from their department to catch up just for existing workload and caseload.
I see. Without the registry.
And this is,
Exactly.
right. And keep in mind, sorry, this is Councilmember Hampton, keep in mind, it's not only just gonna deal with short-term rentals, but long-term rentals. My understanding, there are instances, I don't know how many, but instances where there are long-term rentals and they're not going through the proper channels.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say when I came up here. We went through this same exercise in 2006. When I first started at the city, we had inspectors, we had code enforcement staff. Their job was complaint-based. Code enforcement had become somewhat proactive with the new hiring. So we had 2 full-times, 2 part-times for a while, and they'd become proactive in their code enforcement activities. But the rental inspection program was done by the building inspectors with property maintenance certifications. It was done on the honor system. The code says it's the homeowner's obligation to approach the city to comply with the rental inspection district. What we did in 2006 was we were having complaints about too many people in rental homes. We decided to proactively enforce the rental inspection program. We started looking for numbers on the grocery store glass. We started looking for ads in the paper. We started looking for things published online. And we proactively enforced the long-term rental inspection program. We're back to a complaint-based honor system right now. We have 1 inspector, 1 full-time code enforcement, and we're only doing rental inspections when people call or when we get a complaint from a neighbor and we have to start a case. With this new zoning position, this new property maintenance position, we will be proactively finding these rentals and enforcing them.
Yeah, and I would add to that, we have a responsibility to the long-term renter to make sure that the environment that they're in is safe.
Exactly, that was Mr. Moore's point, yeah.
Do you have a comment?
No, I'm just.
And keep in mind, there's been, sorry, this is Councilmember Hampton again. Keep in mind, there's been instances over the years where the rentals have not exactly been in homes. There's been instances where it's been like an accessory building.
Yes, yes. Absolutely. Any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Councilmember Javed, are you done?
No. Yeah, I'm good,
Are
thank
you
you.
done? Okay, okay. So the staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve the mid-year budget amendment which incorporates changes made to the ARPA budget amendment number 4 and includes the school division's budget as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 11B, third quarter appropriations for FY24, city and schools.
Yeah, so for this agenda, just 2 additional comments. As you can see, the way it's written, we didn't know how the GB was going to vote on the amendment, so there were 2 different motions. Obviously, now with the amended budget approved, you go with the second motion. Just a reminder as well that for this amendment, the school asked for appropriation based on their adopted budget, not their amended budget. And then lastly, just the way that we allocate these things, general funds is appropriate on a quarterly basis, all equal amounts. Debt, 50-50 with quarter 1, quarter 2. And then capital is 50-25, and then catch-up split 50-50 on the last 2 quarters.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? Councilmember Hampton, any last-minute comments or questions on this one?
No.
Okay. Comments or questions? No? Okay. So the First recommended motion is that the governing body appropriate $25,772,268 to the city for Q3 of fiscal year 2024. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Second motion is that the governing body appropriate $13,956,205 to city schools for Q3 of fiscal year 2024. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to 11C, selection of EMS billing agency. Welcome, Chief.
Well, thank you. So, good evening, Madam Mayor and Vice Mayor, members of the governing body. If you don't mind, I'd like to jump off script real quick and go back and say thank you for approving the electronic fireworks show. I think what we do miss with that is the fire marshal's office that stands on that launch pad, their safety is always in jeopardy. So thank you for doing that. That really means a lot to the fire marshal's office. So the first item we have is 11C. That is the selection of the EMS billing agency that the city would like to use. Back in Q1 of this year, I presented to you and made you aware that our current contract with Digitech expired on June 30th. They did not want to renew our contract. They did not make enough profit off the city, so they wanted to move forward. So we went out and searched for an additional company to come in and handle all of our EMS cost recovery. If you remember, we've been doing EMS cost recovery since 2010. We interviewed 4 or 5 different companies, found one that's based out of North Carolina, EMS MC, the management consulting firm. We looked at their dashboard and how they provide us information to make choices and watch the revenue come back in. If you know our city manager, he really watches the revenue pretty strongly. He likes the reports. In the past, I could not give him the reports that he's really wanted based off of our old company. I think this company is going to be really good for the city. One thing we also found out is they actually geared more towards the medium to smaller size agencies. And they think they can increase our cost recovery by a dramatic number. I don't want to put the number out there, but they said a dramatic number. Our old company even wanted to talk about, to even discuss a contract, they wanted 20% of the take. So this company's gonna do 5.3. I know it says 5.75 in the paper, but it's actually 5.3 if you look at their proposal in the back. So I believe that the recommendation would be to allow the city manager to review and sign all contractual agreements based off the city attorney's review.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
The only comment I have, I've heard good recommendations about this company, especially in other parts of the Commonwealth, so.
Yeah, they're all over the Commonwealth.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hampton, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, really quick. Chief, can you give us, or at least give me an example of what an EMS bill would be for?
So there's 3 levels of EMS billing that's pretty much all across the country, that like 85% of the country does EMS billing. And there's 3 categories. There's what's called BLS, which is basic life support, an ALS 1 call, which is you give ALS advanced life support care, and then there's ALS 2 care, which is advanced life support 2, which is where you start giving medications for whatever call it is. So that's the categories where we would bill for. Whatever category the patient would fall into is what they would receive the bill for. We only bill, for the city, we bill what's called compassionate billing. We'll send you 3 bills for the remainder of what your insurance or Medicaid or Medicare doesn't pay as a city resident, because you're already paying a pretty high stipend of taxes.
Do you have a follow-up?
Okay. No, just thank you, Chief, that helps me.
Comments or questions?
I have a question. How many, what percentage don't pay a year on average?
Let me get that number back to you. I definitely would make sure that we get that number emailed back to you. That's a question that Mr. Palco asks a lot too, and I always have to send it back to him. And Ms. Sanchez is that for us, so I'll ask her tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with EMS Management and Consultants, Inc. for emergency medical services, billing, and collection services as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, you're still up. New ambulance purchase, 11D.
Okay, so 11D is, the Fire and Rescue Department has a true need to replace our 2013 ambulance. Our goal is to replace that unit because the maintenance is going up. The wear and tear is pretty much, it took its toll on that unit with the call volume continually going up. A lot of times we don't really look at the mileage in the city as much as we should be looking at the hours. The hours that this vehicle sits and runs, idling all the time at the hospital, and all the scenes. It's truly time to replace this unit. So staying within all the guidelines and following all the NFPA guidelines, we're looking to replace the unit with a Braun medic unit. They're based out of Ohio. We did look at multiple different vendors. We will be riding the HGAC contract, which Fire and Rescue Department has been using since 2008. So the city attorney is well aware of that contract. So at the price of $463,385, we would like to purchase a new medic unit. After talking with the city manager, we have pulled that out of the capital improvement, which has been presented to you multiple years, and we would like to use the ARPA funds to pay for this, which probably would save us somewhere $45,000 to $50,000 in interest charges right now.
That's fantastic that we can use ARPA funds. That's very good
so-
news.
So that's the motion, is that the governing body approve the authorized documents for the city manager to sign, which is going to be reviewed by the city attorney, who has
Okay.
all those contracts in his possession.
Comments or questions?
I just have one question, and I agree with
Yes,
this.
sir.
Once you place the order for it, how long does it take to deliver it? Is it built from scratch, or is
It's
it
roughly 24 months on ambulances.
24 months?
Yeah. So we started talking with them right after we built our last one in 2020, 2021, because that one took roughly 15 to 16 months. There is a chassis already being held for us, which they was going to release to someone else, and we said no tonight. So this probably should be done by summer of '25. Still a long time.
Thank you.
Fire trucks are, if you want to look at fire trucks are 3 years and better.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So you said the chassis is being held for us, because my question is on page, I have no idea, 96 maybe? It says the chassis price is estimated at this time and it won't be confirmed until delivery. So do you feel like we need a contingency before we?
From what we're being told by our vendor, this is the final bottom dollar price.
Okay, thanks.
Well, that was a good question. Comments or questions? Yes.
Hey, thank you, Chief. So currently, we only have one ambulance for the whole department?
Two.
We have two?
We have two.
Okay.
We just replaced our 2008 back in 2020-ish, and then we're looking to replace the 2013. Industry standard says you should be doing anywhere between 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
We've got away from that. We're doing 10 to 12 years, which we're trying now that the city's getting a little bit more better financially with the ARPA funds and the CARE funds to get our fleet back into to working order.
So my question, I guess, is, are we seeing an uptick in calls?
Yes.
EMT calls? So would it be beneficial to maybe hold on to this vehicle? I mean, we still purchased the third one.
Mhm.
Would it be beneficial to hold on to it until we get staffing to maybe even utilize it in the future?
So the goal is we'll have two, well, once we buy the new one, we'll have two rather new medic units or ambulances. Our goal is to do what you said, hold the third one that we truly own until after all the warranty work, the bugs are worked out of the new one, and we'll always have two ready reserve units to go. Should one go down,
Yeah.
because if you come by our station anytime you want, there's always one in the shop waiting for parts, and there's always one on the streets. And it just seems like when one leaves, the other one wants to break down too. So having that additional unit would be nice. And maybe one day we'll get a training center, we can put the third unit at the training center. So that would be a great, great asset for the city.
So that's what I'm saying, so instead of replacing the vehicle,
Yeah.
we essentially hold on to it.
Right. You won't get much on a return if you sell it outright.
Right,
So we just hold it as long as we can hold it and
okay,
use it as much as we need to use it until we can
exactly.
get it back.
Yeah.
And then just a last comment, this is one of those double wins item because this is the, one of the items that we're swapping for the premium pay. So we're getting critical item, equipment for the fire department, but it also frees up city money for premium pay.
Okay.
If we go back to the vice mayor's question, if future years or future equipment, we will probably ask for a contingency based on how long it's gonna take. If I stood there and asked for fire equipment tonight, I would have to ask for a contingency because that's anywhere between, 36 months to 42 months on fire equipment because they're such larger vehicles.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Hampton, do you have a comment or question?
No, no questions whatsoever. This seems pretty straightforward.
Yep. Any other final comments? Nope. Okay. Staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign an agreement with Braun Industries Incorporated for the purchase of an ambulance at a cost of $463,385 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Replacement, thank you very much, Chief. Replacement of flusher truck.
Good evening, Mayor Rischel, Vice Mayor Mensing, members of council, residents, staff, and guests. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. The item before you tonight is for the replacement of our Sterling VATCon flusher truck. It was a 2004 model. We typically expect to get 10 years of service out of a flusher truck like this, but we've gotten 20 good years of service out of this piece of equipment. We had one in the FY24 CIP to replace it. We had $425,000 in the CIP for this replacement equipment. Atlantic Machinery is offered us a quote through a cooperative procurement contract with Virginia Sheriff's Association. That quote was for $525,000, so $100,000 above what was in the CIP. But we solicited financing through VML, and JP Morgan came in as the low interest provider at 4.3. That would make the biennial payments, 10 biennial payments, $59,775.24. So that would bring the total purchase price or the total not to exceed price for this vehicle to $597,752.36.
Thank you, Calvin. Comments or questions?
The only question I have, so how long does it take to get this then?
We have not been committed anything yet. It's gonna be a minimum 6 months probably. But the dump truck was supposed to be here in 6 months, and that was January. We still don't have it yet, so.
Want to drive it?
Comments or questions? Nope. Councilmember Hampton, do you have a comment or question?
Yes, a question. So my question is, with the growth in the city, how will that impact the lifespan of this new vehicle? Will we still be able to squeeze out 20 years, or are we looking at more than 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, to be honest, the main difference in lifespan of a vehicle like this is how much proactive sewer flushing you're able to do. Right now, we use the sewer truck for, the sewer flusher for primarily for stoppages. And if we do encounter during normal televising of lines, if we encounter any grease or debris, we'll then go and flush it. But if we were proactively flushing the entire city all the time for further televising, then I wouldn't expect the vehicle to last as long. But we just don't have the staff to implement a program like that right now. So unless we drastically increase the number of public works staff, I think we can expect to get another 15 to 20 years out of a good VATCON like this. I say that, but this is becoming the Walmart generation where nothing lasts quite as long as it used to. So hopefully they still build them as good as they did 20 years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, there are two staff recommended motions. The first one is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign an agreement with Atlantic Machinery Incorporated for the purchase of a new flusher truck at a cost of $525,000 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. The second motion is that the governing body approve and adopt a resolution designating the city manager or the deputy city manager in his absence and the finance director as authorized representatives for purposes of a lease purchase agreement for the new flusher truck for a total amount not to exceed $597,752.36 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. Okay, moving on to 11F, contracted support to finance human resources, treasurer's office, and commissioner of revenue.
Before I turn over to Josh for the agenda item, just a quick point of clarification for residents. So on this agenda item, there are 4 motions. The last one deals with the cost saving from the senior accountant to pay for this contractor support. Now that the governing body approved the amended budget, that motion is no longer needed.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Thank you. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the governing body. I'm Josh McNeil, Finance Operations Manager for the city. The purpose of this agenda item is to demonstrate our need for contracted support services in finance and other work functions in the city. In the agenda item, sort of highlighted and outlined some of our challenges in finance. So in an effort to alleviate some of those challenges, we issued an RFP back in July of 2023 to see if any financial firms were interested and could provide any augmented support for us here at the city. We received a total of 15 proposals, so there was a lot of interest. And of those 15 proposals, we narrowed down the list to our top 3. And once we identified the top 3, the city manager's office interviewed those top 3 and came away impressed with all 3. So the scope sort of evolved, and we determined that the 3 firms would be able to provide services to more than just the finance department. And so we divvied up the scope of work, and I guess we called it a support by function type of concept. And we pitched the idea to the firms, the top 3 firms, to see if they would be interested and taking on a reduced scope of work that's very focused in certain different areas throughout the city, and they were all receptive. And so, yeah, they updated their proposals and based it on the new scope of work, and that's how we got to this point. All told, the cost of bringing on all 3 firms would amount to about $113,000 for the remainder of FY24, if we got the approval to start in January of 2024. The 3 firms that we would like to contract with are Edie Bailey, K-Tech LLC. By the way, the CEO for K-Tech LLC, she was here earlier. Her name's Kim Farrington, so she was here to show her support, but she had to leave a little earlier. And then the third firm was A&M Financial LLC. And I'll just kind of go over what the 3 firms the services that they would provide for us. So with Edie Bailey, They would support finance specifically to the accounting function in the finance department. Specifically, they would help us with our general ledger reconciliation, annual audit work, and also help us develop some standard operating procedures. And in FY24, the total cost based on their estimated hours in the fiscal year would be about $69,000. And then their annual cost would not exceed $137,940. The next firm is K-Tech LLC, and they would support the operational function in finance. So that's accounts payables, accounts receivable, grants management, and K-Tech would also serve as the overall project manager. So they would work with the other two consultants to develop the schedule, the plan, and help us kind of finalize the deliverables. And so in FY24, their approximate cost would be about $23,000 based on the estimated hours of work in the fiscal year of FY24. And their annual cost would not exceed $44,827. And then finally, the last firm is A&M Financial LLC. They would actually work with the Treasurer's Office, the Commissioner of Revenue, and also the Human Resources Department to a lesser extent. And so with the Treasurer's Office, they would assist with the teller report, reconciliations, delinquency and aging reporting. And then for the Commissioner of Revenue, they would help us with our real estate and personal property tax book reconciliations and possibly help us with our business and meals tax filings as well. And then on the HR front, we need a little bit of support with our payroll to budget reconciliation, so they would step in and help us out with that. And so in FY24, their approximate cost would be about $22,000 based on the estimated hours of work in FY24, and their annual cost would not exceed $43,233. Okay, so the total financial impact for FY24 would be about $18,000 when you factor in the $95,000 in cost savings that come from freezing the senior accountant position in the finance department. So mathematically, that's $113,000 in new expenses subtracted by $95,000 in cost savings, and that's how you arrive at $18,000. The city staff recommends that the governing body approve 3 separate contracts with firms for the contracted financial support at the cost not to exceed $113,000 for the remainder of FY24, which would amount to $226,000 annually. If approved, the city would assess our needs and the performance of these firms on an annual basis and determine if it makes sense to renew the respective contracts. Thanks for your time and consideration. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Have we not been successful in hiring the senior financial person?
So it's currently vacant. We did hire a senior accountant. I believe it was in July, but the employee only stayed on for about a month, maybe a month and a half, and departed for a new position elsewhere. I think it was with a nonprofit organization.
Okay, so it's been vacant since August then.
About August, yeah.
Do these companies know our software situation?
They are very aware of the software situation, the fact that we're planning to transition to a new ERP that was included in our request for proposals. So we would imagine that they would have to come on and learn our current ERP system, Keystone. So we'd set up some training for them on that, and then whenever we make the transition, they would be involved in that process as well.
Okay, and they feel confident that they'll be able to use our current software and be successful?
Yeah, it didn't seem to deter them in the whenever they submitted their proposals. I think that they demonstrated that they would be capable of learning our Keystone software.
And then my last question is, how long do you expect to want to utilize these firms?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we would want to make a determination after working with them a year and evaluate all of their performance. And I'm not trying to punt the question, but it's kind of hard to predict how long we would decide to work with them. And but I can't imagine we would bring on a senior accountant while we're still working with them, because that's kind of what's covering the costs of having them here.
I guess I have one more question for
Okay.
Keith, maybe. Would this come back to us before it was renewed?
Yes, because of the pricing structure, I'll have to come back to you. On the senior accountant note, it's been very hard for us to recruit and retain a senior accountant. And right now, the only accountant on staff is Pond. So I think, like Josh said, we'll assess their performance on a year-to-year basis. But we're so behind right now that I think once they hit the ground running, it's going to be a big help to us. I think we're 3 or 4 months behind reconciliation, so that'll help a lot.
Okay. I'm in favor of it as long as we see it again before their contract gets renewed. Kind of just take it out and let us know how it's been working out.
Yeah, definitely. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Josh, for the presentation. I have a couple questions as well. Of the 3 contracts, how many FTEs will we be getting as a result of these contracts?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that was included in their proposals. So specifically for K-Tech, there are 2 staff members that are included in their proposal. For A&M Financial, I believe we identified 2 to 3 staff members as well. I would have to double check, but I can follow up with you on that.
Appreciate it.
And then with Edie Bailey, I think we identified at least 3 different staff, and we also budgeted out the hours that we would use those staff. So I think it would vary depending on what exactly the work that it is that we need them to do. But I can definitely follow up with you on the specific number of staff, but it would depend on the actual task and functions that we need them to perform.
So we're talking about physical bodies that will be here in City Hall, or will some of this be done remotely?
Primarily remotely. What we included in the request for proposals is a requirement to have some FaceTime with them, especially as in the initial phase as we're working with them. But I think as time goes on, we would anticipate that they would do a lot of their work remotely. So we wouldn't need workspace for any staff people to come in the City Hall for the most part. They may be in temporarily, but not on a long-term basis.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, we also asked them that we're going to search them during peak times, like audits, end of month, things like that.
Correct.
Okay, great. One other question I have 2 questions. Is travel included in this budget? Are we paying for them to travel here on those in-person events?
Yeah, so we didn't include specific travel costs in their proposed amounts. It was strictly about the hours that they would spend performing the work. So to answer your question, it's not included in the amounts.
But there are travel costs that are associated.
They're going to
with this
be,
contract.
especially with Edie Bailey. I think the closest contact that they might have is in Texas right now. They did have a staff member that was in Virginia, but recently left the company. So yeah, that will require some travel. The other 2 are local, somewhat local. A&M Financial is located in Bowie, Maryland. And K-Tech is located in Vienna, or based in Vienna, Virginia.
Yeah, I would love to have the city manager provide all the travel costs, or all the ancillary costs associated. I understand the contracts, the salaries, but I want to know all the costs. Are we going to provide them computers? I'm assuming we will.
Those are good questions.
And so I'd like to know what those costs are. I want to know the total cost of everything.
We can come back to you with that.
Okay, yeah, not tonight. No, I appreciate that. No, I realize. And my final question, as far as our flow chart and who's going to manage these positions, and under whose authority will be managed by?
Yeah, it's stated in the request for proposal that the contractors will work directly with the finance director. So it would be Finance Director Pine Yusuf.
Okay. And I guess I do have one last question. At the end of this year, we're going to evaluate, as Councilmember Mensing, Vice Mayor Mensing pointed out, that we need to evaluate this before we renew the contracts again. So what are the performance measures that we're going to be looking for? Are they set up in advance? Do we know quantifiably how we're going to be able to tell whether they're doing a good job and doing what we need them to do?
Good question. So we included some preliminary deliverables in our request for proposals. So we'll measure their performance by those deliverables, but we'll also, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be working with K-Tech, the project manager, to flesh out those deliverables. And so before we get started, we can definitely make sure that everyone is aware of what the deliverables are that we'll be measuring their performance on.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, no problem.
You mentioned that Ede Bailey is in Texas.
So they're based out of North Dakota and headquartered in Minneapolis, but their closest contact to us, we believe, is in Texas. The person that would be managing the contract for them is based out of San Antonio, Texas.
Okay, so would they be primarily electronic? Would they be remote?
Primarily, they would be remote.
Because that's a lot of airfare.
Yeah.
That's expensive, yeah.
And they've got agreements with other municipalities throughout the nation. And I was informed that the majority of their work is done remotely. And as I mentioned, they'll be doing most of the accounting, working with the accounting function for the most part. So I don't think it will require a lot of in-person time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Jabez.
Thank you for the presentation, but I think this might be a question for either Dean or Acting City Manager for motion number 3. I don't know how we could include a treasurer and commissioner's office in there. I think we were waiting for the city manager's department to give us confirmation if there was ingredients.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably Maslow is the one that was going to give us an update on that. So I don't know how we could do a motion on that.
Can't discuss that.
So I think right now the motion before you is asking for additional help, which we know those offices need to kind of be a little bit more efficient. I think it's kind of unrelated to the other item.
All right. Well, I mean, it doesn't make sense to pay for it if there's no step further on it. You know what I'm saying? The 43,233.
We're not supposed to discuss that.
You talk about something totally different.
No,
It's a closed session.
It was in the email.
It's a closed session, though.
No, it was not a closed session.
The agreement.
No, I'm not referring to that. I have an email up here. I don't know if we can see it, but
I think Councilman Javed is saying, are we getting buy-in from
I
these
have a question
these
for you.
offices
Does that
to
sound-
use these services?
Can you speak directly into your mic?
Are we getting buy-in to use these services by the treasurer and the commissioner?
Absolutely. We talked to Patty and Debbie about getting them additional help, and they're all on board.
They are.
so that was my question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
The question I have for you,
Do you have a
I
follow-
agree. I'm sorry.
Do you have a follow-up?
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
Josh, thank you for the presentation. The question I have, I understand as a short term, I do get concerned with people being remote, especially if we need people here and getting people to onboard from distant places, especially for small municipal government, can be challenging. And if they give you 2 people, is that 80 hours? Is that 2 part-time people? Is it, the billable hours? So I like to see time tracking on the deliverables, because I'm assuming you're mostly gonna be tasking and they're gonna do the tasking. And I'd like to see some time management on that. 226,000, I know that's coming out in the future years. That is a concern for me. I'd rather see staff here in place than having piecemealing of some, and it being a permanent basis. I understand temporary solutions to get some of these, areas that are struggling to assist them and get that resolved quickly. But for a long term, I wouldn't want to see spend that much money. I'd rather have people here. Thank you.
Understood.
Okay. Councilmember Hampton, do you have any comments or questions?
I do. So first, speaking as someone that has been on projects where the whole entire team has been remote, including where part of the project was dealing with finance, it's not an issue having folks remote. You can work just as well remotely as you can in person. Second, for $113,000 and looking at when I reviewed the resumes that were provided in these contracts, there's no way on earth that we could get the experience that these people provide for one person at that cost. If I'm not mistaken, the one individual from K-Tech was in the OCFO office in a number of federal agencies, and also, I believe, what worked out of OMB. So these are some pretty high level, well-informed individuals. I do agree that have it be more of a short term, and short term could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 3 years, but I really do prefer that it not be a long-term solution, but short term most definitely. One question I did have, and I don't know if we know this, I did see that KTEC follows what typically happens in federal contracts, that each year that you have them, there's a slight increase in the cost, with the assumption that the increase has to deal with, just the increase in costs all around. If I remember correctly, I did not see such an outline from the other contractors. Am I correct in that?
I believe you are correct, Councilmember Hampton.
Okay.
It wasn't prescribed as part of the request for proposal. I think KTEC just took the initiative to include the out-year cost as well.
Yeah, I think that comes from probably her experience in the federal space. If it's possible, and I don't know if it is, if we at some point could find out that same type of information from the others, that would be helpful as well. But overall, I'm extremely in favor of outsourcing this work. And like I said, for the price of $113, you can't even get one of these individuals for that amount. So I'm in favor of this.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay. There are 3 motions. The first motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign an agreement with Eid Bailey LLP for Finance Department accounting support services at an annual cost not to exceed $137,940 as presented, subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Second motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign an agreement with KTEC LLC for Finance Department project management and operations support at an annual cost not to exceed $44,827 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Third, that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign an agreement with A&M Financial LLC for Human Resources Department, Treasurer's Office, and Commissioner of Revenue Accounting Support Services at an annual cost not to exceed $43,233 as presented, subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, thank you very
Good
much.
job.
That was terrific.
Good.
Okay, moving on to 11G, Manassas Park Library Internet and Computer Use Policy. Welcome, Holly.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to talk to you about the internet use policy. Essentially, what I'm looking to do is to remove the language in it currently and replace it with a more customer service oriented language. Currently, it does say that any patron who is using our computers can request unfiltered internet access. However, that is not how the current IT configuration is set up. It's not possible for library staff to give that unfiltered access, so that's not very good customer service of us. Instead, I would like to replace it with the language that our patrons can let us know that some site has been blocked in error, and then we can submit that to the IT department to review and allow as applicable, or still continue to deny if they deem that it has been blocked correctly.
Okay, comments or questions? Questions? Councilmember Hampton, comments or questions?
Nope, seems pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Okay, the staff recommended motion is that the governing body approves additions and changes to the Internet and Computer Use Policy 13.1 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We are on to our second public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on to city manager's report. Do you have anything further?
No report, but just a couple of quick announcements. I was told by the printing company that the real estate bills will be mailed tomorrow, so residents can expect to receive them by the end of the week. And then just a reminder that our winter market's starting this Saturday, and then every Saturday going forward. And then lastly, the no commercial vehicle parking enforcement will start January. That will start with a warning violation, and then February will be the actual enforcement.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there is no closed session, so is there anything else for the good of the city? Okay, motion to adjourn? Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Happy holidays to everyone. Yes, that's right.
Absolutely.
Who made these?
Oh, Daryl.
Yes, you can.
Daryl.